I'm taking minutes, I can't.
So I nominate Karen as our secretary.
There you go, Karen.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Hello, David, say aye.
Quick before she can change her mind. Yeah.
Record that in the minutes.
And I will be able to access the recording, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, this is easy.
Technology.
If I am able to do another meeting. I'll try to just.
Valerie, you want to start the ball
Yeah.
rolling?
Sure, so I'll just introduce myself to everybody. I am Valerie Carr with Horizons Engineering. I've emailed a few of you back and forth. I am the environmental manager at the company, so I am kind of overseeing this project as well as the Andover one with John. Obviously, one of the first steps is to get a committee founded, which sounds like you guys are all members of this now. And part of this process with our plan is, you know, technically we're required to have 4 meetings before we finalize this plan. To have some back and forth between us and you guys. So the big thing, with this plan, obviously, the grant was awarded from the Clean Water Act, Safe Drinking Water Act with DES. Part of the plan was for us to pull together some base mapping. And then to take a look at, potential threats to your lake. And basically evaluate what these threats are, give them a threat level. And then from there, come up with a plan, work with you guys, to come up with a plan to monitor any of these potential threats, basically have an action plan if any of these threats were to truly become active, and then how to remediate them, you know, and keep the state happy with that and make sure that everyone has safe drinking water. We have, so
The
Go ahead,
action
Karen.
plan includes remediation steps.
So the action plan is basically, it kind of outlines if you have a cyanobacteria outbreak on the lake,
Right, what to do.
what the steps are, who you should notify, how to, you know, address it and how to handle it.
Okay.
So, maybe remediation was not really the word I should have used.
Okay.
So to date, we've pulled together, a lot of the base mapping. We have done the initial windshield survey to look at potential threats to the lake. We've started to evaluate them and kind of given them, you know, a high or low priority. And, we've been back and forth with Pierce Rigrod at DES. His biggest concern, is this cyanobacteria bloom that you guys had last fall. Which, if I'm understanding, John, was
Last for a day.
last for a day and was kind of gone, but it's a big red flag to the state. So that's the big portion of this plan that we're putting together for you guys, and then to update, you know, you had one of these put in place in 2006, I believe, you know, so that's obviously 18 years old at this point in time. So our main focus is to update that old plan that you guys had to current standards, and then just to talk with you guys about any concerns you may have, things that we may not have already noticed should be included in these plans. We have honestly a very, very preliminary report started. We don't have a full-blown plan for review or anything like that at this point in time. We've got some bullet points that we've talked about. We've got some really good feedback from DES, from Pierce and Melissa at DES. In regards to what we've provided them to review. There's still a lot of work to be done with this. So, you know, hence our first meeting with you guys was just to put faces to our names, introduce ourselves to you guys, and just kind of walk you through any questions you may have, or, you know, what your thoughts are, what you're looking to get from us out of this.
Okay, I have one question. What percent done would you say you are?
So
10%, 20%?
I would say we are probably 60 to 65% done. So tasks 1 through 3 of this grant, which is a lot of the research side of it, is 99% complete. It's the actual writing of the plan itself, which is where the step we're at right now. You know, and again, like I said, the holdback on that is just getting input from you guys, making sure we have these meetings, making sure everybody's on the same page with, here's what we've identified as threats. Have we missed anything? Do you guys know about something that we don't know about? And kind of talking with you guys about action plans as to, you know, should you have that cyanobacteria outbreak? But I keep saying that because that's DES's big focus with this thing. But you have other threats, you know, between septic systems around your lakes and people with heating oil tanks, things like that. So there are some other smaller things that also need to be discussed. So that's kind of where we're at. You know, we have this list put together. The cyanobacteria portion of it, we are still in the research phase of that. Got to get a little bit of input from John in regards to the current system. If there's an outbreak, is the system, how is it handled? How's it treated? You know, so those are things that we're still pulling all that information together for the action side of it.
I'd like to see if we can do some kind of physical restriction on the private property that's around the water supply end of the lake.
And
If
if
that
like
could be worked.
physical restriction, what are you asking?
Well, I mean, we have, it's banned, you can't enter the water on those properties,
Okay.
but there's no fence, there's nothing stopping from somebody other than being honest.
I mean,
So,
and that is something that, Steve, on your end, that may be something that you guys need to write into your town zoning and ordinance regulations as well. So just keep that in mind. I mean, I know you guys are like, oh my God.
Just click the.
But, I'm not saying that we can't make that as a suggestion in the plan, but if it's not part of your town ordinance, you don't have a way to enforce that for these people. So this is an action plan, but this action plan also has to be in compliance with your town ordinances and, things like that. So if that's not a requirement in your ordinance, I'm not sure you can make it. You can suggest it in the plan, but it's whether you can enforce it or not, is the next question.
So, Cody, could you go to the town website and go to the source water protection?
Yeah.
Webpage and maybe share your screen,
Let me let Barry.
because there was,
Derek here?
the 2006 plan was put together and then there are a lot of recommendations in there.
Mhm.
Some were actually implemented, which is unusual, but it does happen. And so we've got those things, and then in a couple of years after that, Plymouth State University came out with a plan
Yep.
with more recommendations.
Yeah.
So really for the benefit of everybody who's assembled here, who may not have looked at these things yet.
Is the Plymouth State on the website?
Yeah, can you get to the website?
Yeah, this is the plan. Do you want a particular page?
Okay, well, just, why don't you scroll down a little bit so we can see the,
Table of contents?
well, just maybe the cover page.
All right.
Okay, so when you go to the website, now, to get to that, you're gonna go to Source Water Protection Committee on the Canaan website. And then you're gonna go to, I think it's laws and rules or some heading like that.
Yeah, it's basically the Source Water Protection Committee page. And then you scroll down under laws and policies.
Okay, so you'll see the plan is right up there at the top.
Mhm.
And then somewhere on that page is the study from Plymouth.
Right here.
Oh,
Okay, now
Yeah.
that has a lot of good recommendations in it too also. So you need to look at both those old
Yeah.
plans.
Yeah.
To see were there any good ideas that you didn't think of, maybe you can add that to the pile.
Right.
And-
And we do have copies, I believe, of both of those plans, so we've
Yeah.
reviewed them. And, there's, to be honest with you, as far as, identified potential concerns and recommendations, a lot is probably not gonna change from these two plans that you have, other than to bring it current.
Right.
And the big thing is the addition of the cyanobacteria portion of this. So again, this is where I would say to you guys, if all of you have not had a chance to review what you have in place here.
Yeah.
Take a quick look at these reports, make some notes in them as to what you think are really good suggestions or things you'd like to see changed. And that's what we're looking for from input from you guys before we present to you our plan. I just think more input from you guys and what you're looking to really see happen here is gonna help us provide you with the best plan, and it's gonna save a lot of back and forth, like changing this plan 10, 12 different times.
We also have a drinking water protection ordinance, so that's, I don't know if that's, I think that's also on this
I
one.
think it's out on the site.
On this list as well. So that doesn't do a heck of a lot. It keeps commercial, so very high hazard commercial operations away from the lake.
Away from the lake.
But the low hazard operations, it probably doesn't do much. And there's probably some more work we can do with this ordinance to add things here. Some tricks can go in the subdivision regulation, some tricks can go in this ordinance. And maybe we need a new other document, which is a zoning document or some kind of ordinance to implement some of the things that we recommend.
Right, and again, these are, this plan that we're pulling together for you guys, obviously, just because you put suggestions in there and things, you have time to implement that kind of stuff. It's not like it has to be instant, talking about putting fencing around some of the private properties. I mean, obviously, my guess is you're probably gonna get a little pushback from some of your residents in that aspect. But if you know, if it's something that you truly feel is warranted and you put it into your regulations, then you have, by all means, you know, you
I
can include it
did
in
talk to
this.
DES and they're receptive to putting floating buoys every 200 or 300 feet around the shoreline.
Yeah.
So around the perimeter of the reservoir, you could have floating buoys that says, don't you dare.
Yeah.
That'll be along with all the buoys that I have to put out now.
Yeah.
And then in the winter, we'll be picking up 30 more buoys on top of the 5.
So can I interrupt? I mean, I just was wondering if, like, I heard Steve say, thinking about physical barriers, and I have something that I think I would like to see. I just wonder if we could go around and if people have an idea now about what they'd like to see, I'd like to hear that.
You wanna start?
So
Yeah.
you could hear it sooner.
Yeah,
rather
no,
than
no,
later.
that's fine,
Yeah.
because, you know, obviously you guys have had some time to think about this and, you know, you have.
Not
not-
as a group, but.
Right,
yeah.
but individually, and you
Yeah.
know, again, like I said, we have not provided you with anything that we've pulled together yet, because we really wanted your input. To make sure that we're all on the same page with what we're looking at here. If you guys have something that you feel is way more important than we do,
Go ahead. Yeah.
you know.
Oh, no, I don't
So-
have to start. I'm hearing every, I want to go last.
Go ahead, let's start.
Yeah, so I think I have a couple small things that I just keep in mind when we approach this sort of issue from the Conservation Commission, because our role, of course, is not directly to protect drinking water, but to protect the natural resources, which includes a multitude of different water bodies and land types. And when I also sat on the planning board for about a year or so, and I think what I learned that's complex in town is that we have so many documents and plans around related things such as drinking water, groundwater protection. We have our master plan that outlines a lot of, you know, quote unquote guidance. It would just be really nice to be a bit more succinct and, you know, if we're gonna use, if we're putting money and effort and time into this document, like, let's replicate it across some of the other outdated stuff as well, so that we don't have 5 documents in town saying 5 different things. So that's something that I've been really aware of in the past couple of years, at least on the Conservation Commission. And then the other thing is, when we look at controlling a situation in town, it comes down, for me, it comes down to 3 things. It's education of townspeople, enacting ordinances, and taking action that the town has the power to do, which in, you know, the case of the Conservation Commission, it's purchase of land. So there's kind of those 3 areas that we can enact change and protect drinking water, and this is my opinion, but based off of what I've read from DES, their best practices, their, you know, land use controls related to drinking water, it usually boils down to those 3 things. So again, keeping with the theme of being succinct and uniform, like, I would really like us to think about those 3 items.
So Cody, with that being said, I guess my question is, you know, if there needs to be changes or updates to the town ordinances or anything like that, what is the process within your town to do that here?
Most of it, yeah, most of it begins at the planning board.
Okay,
But we don't have comprehensive zoning in town.
okay,
That's why
So
we left.
we have zoning, it's just not typically called zoning, it's under the phrase ordinance.
okay,
Such as the drinking water protection ordinance.
okay,
And we can enact change through that, but there's restrictions of what can go in that document.
Okay.
And it always has to go before to the vote, so any changes that we propose this year would have to wait until next year to be voted on and enacted.
okay. I mean, I guess the good thing with this is, you know, at this point in time, you know, we are requesting an extension to complete this plan, so we technically have another whole year to do this. So if things come up in this plan that need to be changed, if it's requirements to changes in your ordinances and things like that, you would have time to potentially implement those, your town meeting next March, before the final completion of this document. if that's something that, if there are big things that really need to be changed, so that everything can be uniform, and if someone references one document versus another, it all states the same thing.
That's great.
So, but again, that, I mean, we can talk about this, we can make those changes, but obviously as the town has to,
Mhm.
follow through with them and make those changes and approve them.
So for the minutes,
Mhm.
you would like to see uniformity among the many guidance and planning documents for the
Yeah,
town.
but
Okay.
because we're here now, we have members of the Conservation Commission, the Planning Board, Select Board, John, others, it's a really nice way to be able to come up with something that we all agree on. And then we can go back to our respective boards and say, look, this is the language we've all agreed on, let's propagate it down into the other documents, or maybe even reduce the need for those other documents if possible.
I think I can get that.
What happened?
I might call you, yeah,
Well,
I'll
you've got
get it
the-
in the minutes.
You've got the
Well,
recording to fall back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The recording will bail you out.
okay,
And there's a transcript too of the report.
oh, God, okay.
John,
Why am I taking minutes?
Well,
I ask that question every time.
it-
Legally, we have to. I guess.
it's hard to go through the recording and take minutes.
Yeah.
It is, yeah, I've done it before, yeah.
John, do you have any great ideas?
I think Steve's idea of trying to get something around the lake, I think that's where we have to look. In Maine, they give an allowance, it's 30 feet off the shoreline. And they literally put signs and sometimes fencing within 30 feet of that shoreline. The state is way against that. I talked to Pierce for about an hour and a half concerning that. He doesn't want anything on land that's on private land. But we still can do something at the water's edge. The water, literally 1 inch of water, you're in state property. So I mean, you're not on anyone else's property. So we could probably, and it's more towards the southern to the left. As you're facing down to the right, that is where it's walkable. On the other area over there, on the left side, it is barely walkable and very steep, very active. You can't get to it as easy. But on the right side, as you're heading down towards the water plant, there's a lot of, you can actually walk it all the way down to the end. So we want to protect that area, as we look. Generally in the summer, I have nobody down there anyway. We do have the nicest beach in the whole town right at the end there. But with the water increasing, and the Guardians put 2 extra boards in, our levels are up probably a foot from where they were several years back. A foot and a half, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that water basically is up and is into that swamp area. That's the intermediate, that's right behind the edge of the lake, where my water line is.
Do you know who owns those wetlands?
Well, the wetlands are owned by Majewski's right now. So there's 7 or 9 or,
I'm not sure how many, but he's got them up for sale right now. So,
yeah.
As waterfront property.
As waterfront, okay,
What?
you can't really do them, but it's wetlands.
Well, when he put it in the Wall Street Journal, and that weekend, I must have 37 phone calls. I said, you can look at the water, you can't touch the water. And the minute they heard that, that was the end of the conversation.
Right.
The minute they said they couldn't touch the water, and we can't do this, we can't do that, no. That's the way it is, it's a reservoir, public water source.
Well, I know that we've talked on the phone before,
Oh, yeah.
and I know that you were interested in trying to get those wetlands under some kind of protection.
Yeah,
other
but,
than
well, the state doesn't want to go for that
the
either.
state doesn't want to go for it. What
No,
about
we
the
have
mud
2
cup?
wetland areas, if you can pull up the map. Yeah, if you can pull up the map, I'll show you, we have 2 wetland areas that really affect the quality of the water.
Mhm.
In that southern wetland area, and there's one, you go beyond the beach to your left. Right on Canaan Street, and that really affects the quality of the water.
I believe Kevin's done function and value assessments for all of them.
Why is the water up a foot?
Well, because, John knows about this, about 7-8 years ago, the dam was starting to come apart. So we had to find out actually who owned the dam. And it took us almost a year of research to find out that Cardigan owned the dam. And they were nice enough to repair
So your dam is in good condition?
it. The dam is, they actually updated it.
And there's not a reason for the water to be up.
I talked to the DES everybody involved that cares about the perimeter protection. And eventually it got referred to the dam bureau.
We just shared this.
And the surveyor at the dam bureau has gone back into his records, and he found documents from 1938 and documents from the 50s, I think. And as far as he's concerned, the elevation of the lake is 1142, I think. And that's what he considers what the state owns.
Well, I believe the reference line that DES lists is 1445 and a
Yeah.
half.
But that's not what the state owns. That
Okay,
comes out of the shoreland law.
Yep.
Which has nothing to do with what the state owns.
See, there's a wetland area right here. That goes in, there's actually a house literally right.
Yeah.
At the end of that
I
lane,
think Karen or
and it's
Morgan has
right that, when that water level comes up, this whole area is flooded. And then down here is, this whole area down here is flooded, all the way back to where we did our drilling.
So that's behind Nordsy's old house?
Exactly,
Up
yeah,
there,
yeah.
Okay.
So this area and that area are really affecting the quality of the water. This not so much because it's all natural and it's kind of self-regulating and everything else, but this up here, you're having it affected by septic tanks, salt, and everything that goes along with it. You're giving it another point of entry right here.
But the state doesn't own that.
I know, that's it,
So,
I
okay.
agree.
The state doesn't want to do anything without the owner's permission.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
a
perfect.
Corrigan Mountain School lot?
No, this is actually the private property. There's a road that actually hooks in there.
Okay,
And there's one house on one side and a house on the other. There's one literally right near the water side. Right near the water's edge.
Cardigan Mountain is that little white,
Yeah.
cow's udder on the left.
the kind of like peninsula thing.
The peninsula that comes out, yeah.
So. I guess I'm just trying to get my head around. Why the water level is
But
the way
Cardigan,
it is.
Cardigan will adjust the water level to anything we as a town, a lake want. They'll
Okay.
pull boards out, they'll put boards in. So
Okay.
if you feel that's too high,
Well, last year was an abnormal situation. We got 18 inches of rain just in July. Never mind, I think it was a total almost 60 inches from June 1st all the way to September 30th. That's a lot of rain.
Plus you've had a very wet winter.
Yeah, we had
Very
one
wet
at the
spring.
top of it, yeah.
but I don't think the lake is high by long-term standards.
Okay.
We were in drought from 15 through 19. So I mean, your water levels were depressed. It actually, down in the end, there was actually a beach. There was a 6-7 foot beach going all the way around the end. To give you an idea.
So what's the elevation now? Do we know? Plus or minus a foot or something?
It was surveyed in
I'm sorry.
January or February, I think. And a surveyor found that it was 1144 or something like that.
Oh, okay.
I can
So
look
it's
up that.
pretty close to the 1142.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
Okay.
measured it when we did put in our line.
Got it.
So you probably can look
Okay.
back at that data.
Okay,
Duffy measured it, yeah.
sorry to
And
hold everybody up.
1145 is what they
Yeah.
use for shoreline protection.
Okay,
I said, could say mad dog, but they would know what I'm talking about.
I would know who you're talking about.
But anyway, DES is willing to let us put floating buoys in. We just have to do a permit by notification to the wetlands folks. And they're willing to let us put stakes in the water, which is on their side of the ownership.
It'll be in the
If-
water side.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, with.
But
that won't affect us.
they would prefer we did floating buoys, but they'll also allow us to put stakes, so we could put in like a highway inch by inch steel post in the water
Mhm.
and a aluminum sign on the top of the post. That's a possibility.
Every 6 feet.
Yeah, right. And they're perfectly receptive to us putting signs on private property so long as the owner agrees, and most owners won't agree.
That's exactly it.
Anybody else, you wanna keep going around, Stephen, for, any thoughts or ideas? that-
I have nothing different, but.
Okay, well, cyanobacteria is the big bugaboo. We have had that once before. It's in the one-stop data, so if you go search it, you'll find it. And then I think it was like 6 or 7 years ago. And it was another one that was just a fleeting thing, it was gone before you knew it. But this. It is in the lake, it's in very low quantities, and we have not had major problems over the long term. But it could be, if you get a good bloom, when it gets sucked into the water pipe. And I'm not sure John's filter is gonna do anything with the toxin, because once the little guys die and they release their toxin. I think it just goes into the system, and I don't think chlorine's gonna do much with it, and it's just gonna go right through. But the good news is, the concentration will probably be so low that humans won't be affected.
So right now, are you guys, I mean, I know we have some data from, stuff that's been collected around the lake, but is there anybody that's monitoring that on a regular basis or doing any type
The
of
same
actual sample?
We actually did, there's 27 surface water systems in the state. Karen knows that, we're one of the 27 children, as we call them in the DES. And what happens is we are one of the 7 that is actually tested. So they came here and tested every other week.
But that was only last summer. right?
Last summer was the first time they've ever done it.
Yeah.
And it came on Halloween Day.
Right,
So Halloween Day, it went to 80 degrees. From like 40 that morning. We had a big change, and then literally the next day, it went down to 39. So it probably 1 o'clock in the afternoon was probably 65, 70. We had the bloom, and you could actually see it. It would look like white sprinkles on the lake.
So, John, if last year was the first year they tested as often as they did, are we sure that's the first year that we actually?
We discussed it before. I think it's there all the time, like what John said. It's just that it hits,
it's always there.
it hits a bloom.
You can't see it,
Right.
it's in such small quantities, and
Right.
if it's below the surface, which it can be. You're just not gonna see it.
In this case, it generated right on the surface, because that was the warmest part of the water. The water hadn't turned over. We were still early, and that was probably another 3 weeks away from that. And then you could see it right on the surface.
Yeah, but cyanobacteria itself is not really the problem.
Right.
It's if a whole bunch of them get to this large bloom, enormous quantities, and if they happen to be the right species, and they all die at once, they release a toxin,
Toxin, yeah,
and it's the toxin that's the problem.
for dogs and children.
Yeah. So with that being said, do you guys, I mean, obviously, this testing that was done by the state last summer, every other week, was, done by the state for their reasons. Do you guys have anybody that visibly monitors the lake on a daily basis?
John does it through his water treatment.
Yeah, do it
Okay.
through the plan, then I have people from volunteers from the lake community that go out
Okay.
actually on the boards, and they tell me if they see anything.
Okay,
But John could add to his routine a test of the incoming water to see if any of the toxins are present. So that's a relatively low cost thing, because he's already doing the water
Yeah, doing
testing.
testing anyway.
right, okay,
And, but we don't have anybody that goes out on a regular basis. Karen has the VLAP program, so the
Yeah.
Lake Association goes out, but that's only 3 or 4 times a summer.
Yeah, it's once a month
We-
and we
we-
don't do any,
actual laboratory testing.
well, we don't do the lab testing.
Okay.
We don't take the measurements that would indicate the bacteria count, the
Okay.
cyanobacteria.
But
So,
you could add that. I mean, you collected the samples, if it goes to the lab and the lab chooses to test it. Because we have to figure out who's gonna pay for it. If John
You-
pays for it.
yeah, but John and I were at this seminar and we learned that the lab we use for our water quality analysis is not equipped to
Not
do,
equipped.
it can't do the
Yeah,
bacteria.
I was kind of hoping they have one down at Colby Sawyer.
Yeah,
And
it'd
then
have to go all the way
they
to
don't have the
Concord.
$30,000 piece of equipment that they need.
So is Concord the only place that can do it?
Concord's the only place.
Is it Eastern Analytical?
Yeah.
No, Eastern doesn't have that same, it's a certain probe that the state uses. It's gotta be
Okay.
consistent to what the state has.
Right.
Not that they're talking about in the meeting.
Yeah, well, that's what, yeah. No, over at Sunapee, they actually have a sawn that sticks in the lake.
Mhm.
It looks like a Robbie the Robot. They just
Right.
bought a brand new one.
Yeah.
And, it's costly, it's $75,000.
That's what Pierce was talking
Yeah.
about, because that's what we were saying, and. Obviously, John, you've had multiple conversations with Pierce.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they are really hot and heavy with this cyanobacteria stuff, and from our perspective, we understand that it's, potentially very dangerous, but, do we wanna say to you guys, look, you gotta buy a $75,000 piece of equipment to monitor this when, you could start out with something much less, like you said, visual monitoring or adding it to your laboratory fees. And then if it becomes a problem, then you have to address a bigger cost to deal with it, and that's really what DES is looking for is, what are your long-term plans with the cyanobacteria? We can put in this thing in our plan, you might gonna monitor it daily, visually, or through John doing laboratory testing, but what is the long-term plan if you have multiple blooms and it becomes a problem? So those are things that, from a town perspective, you gotta present this to your people to say, here's our plan, but, if we should have an active problem with multiple blooms, we have to figure out a new way to address it because it definitely will affect your water system and,
Well, Plan can include the best way to do something and the pros and cons,
right,
and the pragmatic way to solve the problem and the pros and cons. And that, all that can be in the plan.
yeah,
Because you put stuff in the plan, doesn't mean we have to implement.
correct. Yep, but we just wanna make sure that everybody, what we're putting in the plan, everybody understands what the long-term potential is with that stuff, like I said, just because we put it in the plan that, we're gonna say, potentially you may have to buy this Robbie robot to put in your lake. I mean, the town is looking at a fairly substantial cost to do that, so, these are just, like I said, I'm just throwing things out there because you have a plan, but you also have to look at the big picture for your town.
Well, the problem is that they're testing labs in Concord.
Right,
And for us to get it down there, and I'm doing testing, regular testing, I'm doing
Yeah.
twice a month. And to get it down there is difficult, because all mine's going to Eastern versus going to the states and animal all to their own.
yep.
So we talked to them about actually have some type of testing unit up here,
Mhm.
because we have Meredith has 2 lakes that they're drawing off of. We have, actually the river, they're actually, Woodsville's breaking it right out of the river. We have 6 other water supplies that are up north that are surface
Mhm.
water. So basically, almost 40% of the state's surface water supply units are above Canaan. So we need to get something central with it. It's a simple test,
Right.
but it's an expensive piece of
But
equipment.
those pieces of equipment, yeah.
So.
Yeah.
We tried to talk Colby Sawyer into it, but it would be nice that if we could get someone at Plymouth
Mhm.
to do it.
Oh, that's a
It would
good
be
idea.
easier to go that way.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the
state.
thing, because then that would be centralized to the people up
It
north,
sure would.
right down 93.
Yeah.
Can we be the tester and have other communities sending their water down?
Yeah, well, we could do that, but the problem is we're not
Always looking for
central.
ways to make money.
Yeah. But it's a simple test, but the equipment is costly. That's what it comes down to.
Well, we can also look at like seeing if we can find funding partners. I don't know, the state would probably help out.
That's their, well, how much would they have, 1.2 million, they said? Yeah, I think it was a little over 1 million, so if we actually
It's
put a
not a
proposal
lot.
together, I think they
Yeah.
would finance.
Mhm. Right,
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the only problem is that they put out an RFP for testing last year and nobody wanted to bid on it. Because of all the things you have to do. It is, it's labor intensive. You have to have a boat, a vehicle and everything else that goes along with it. And at the end of the day, you have to get those samples within 4 hours to the lab.
That's well, maybe that's something that we could talk to Plymouth about and see if they have, I know that they have an environmental
Yeah, they
major.
do, that's what, yeah.
So if you could get like interns, I know that DES has interns
Yeah.
that go out every summer doing the.
We've met them all.
Yeah, but if you can get a Plymouth specific intern to kind of monitor these 6 in the area.
Yeah.
And then Plymouth has the boat and then they're kind of fronting the cost.
Yeah, we could do something like that, but they're doing it now, they're using
Right.
private
Actually,
boats.
Gotta
Yeah.
do it.
But the thing is they would have to do something along with that. I mean,
Yeah.
and a lot of these surface and a lot of these reservoirs, there's no access to.
right.
I mean, we have something where there's access to. A lot of these, they literally have to carry a boat in,
Yeah.
carry it in, get in the boat, and then actually go out and take a sample. It's not an easy thing to do. And they have 2 down south. They have one in Salem. And I can't remember I think outside of Dover. I think there's one outside of Dover. Or
Oh,
off
is
the,
it Summersworth?
it cuts to Somersworth. It's off the Cochico River. And the problem there is that they had 183 days of cyanobacteria.
Yeah.
In those 2 locations. For us, I mean, it's like John said, once in a blue moon, once in 11 years.
So far.
Yeah, well, I know, that's the thing, that's.
Yeah.
But you get a lot of rain, you get a lot of groundwater, you get a lot of temperature change. That's where you're gonna run into it. I mean, Little Lake Sotheby's had it probably 11 years straight. In the conditions where they get that rain, everything, get all the runoff hitting that lake. That's when they get it, and it's very shallow lake compared to ours.
So right now, John, like if you have a cyanobacteria bloom like the one you had last October, what actions are taken with the town? I mean, are there notifications sent out, like where?
We actually put a notification, Steve put the notification online.
Okay.
Basically, and then we monitor it, so we went and resampled it the next day. And literally, you could see it was gone, I mean, we went from 80 degrees to 37 degrees the next day. I mean, and that's not good for the bacteria.
Right, but as we're talking, like, I mean, the visible bloom may be gone,
Yeah.
but are you dealing with? You know, what's the downside if there was a release of toxins in the water? I mean, obviously you've got to be testing for
Well,
that.
Well, we just updated our intake of the water line, our old intake was only 4.5 feet.
Right,
And now it's down 14 feet.
Yep.
So I mean, that makes a big difference.
But you haven't been testing for toxins, have you?
Not at all, no, I don't think no one has
Yeah,
ever,
we don't,
Well,
yeah.
Yeah.
DES
Plus you
did
don't.
test for toxins at Canaan Street Lake. But it was just I think they got a salesman sample of a
Oh.
test kit.
magical juice.
right.
And so they poured some stuff in there and they got some dye that changed and they said, oh, there's toxins there, so. But I didn't hear anything more about it, so, and this was like 10 years ago. It was
And they
some-
found out it was fish urine.
Yeah, right. A lot of these initial test kits
Oh, yeah.
turn out to be not quite what they're racked up to be.
So I'm looking back at my cell phone. 27th was when it was first noticed.
Yes, yeah,
I thought I had a picture of it on my phone, but I think I took a picture of it with my. It was whatever day the 27th was, I remember it was gone on Monday morning. And so I think there were like 2.5 days.
it was going the
Yeah.
next day, because we had to physically go out and sample.
So cyanobacteria is one of the things I want to do, and then the other thing I'd like to do is to. Nick is all raring to go, we've started to look at the drinking water protection. Ordinance, and
Okay.
I think we can do that, something in there with buffers. And some restrictions. And maybe we can even expand it to do something with septic systems. Whether we do a.
Yes.
Automatic registry or a
Or a review,
inspection, or I don't know what we do, but we probably can do something, because. There are a variety of septic systems around the lake. And I know of at least one case where there is no tank, it's just leach pipes that run into the ground.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily all that bad if you've got a camp that's used 4 weekends a year. That's, technically probably functions better than some of the big family septic systems. But a lot to do with septic is how often you use it. If you got, how big is your household and how frequently do you use it? What's the load? So how we do that? I think we'd like to put something in the drinking water protection ordinance. And, but it has to go before the voters, and the voters have to agree that, yes, we want to protect Canaan Street Lake, and no, we don't want to put it in the rest of town because I don't want my septic tank checked.
Yeah. Not in my front.
My Barry
Not in my
57
front
Chevy.
yard, yeah.
I believe today we only have the 50-foot by default from the state, right? Is that what we determined when we reviewed this last?
For septics,
No, for just a primary building setback. That's really the only
Right.
setback we have.
the shoreline protection gives you 50 feet.
50 feet, yeah.
You can put a gazebo within 20 feet.
I know, I'm looking at,
My house is 8 feet,
Yeah, well, it's.
From the water.
was in 1892.
Yeah.
I asked, but I couldn't.
Back. not
We
closer.
wanted to move it back, but
This is
we weren't
from,
allowed.
this is from a
Yeah.
presentation way back when the original plan came out.
Mhm.
This was one of the slides that was there. I think the idea was just to demonstrate that we can have setbacks, but the only one that was actually enacted was this 50-foot.
No, actually, all of those are enacted.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the state, yeah.
So
These
that-
are all state,
State
Yeah.
regulations, yeah.
The 50 means you can't build,
right?
and the 150 means you can't remove all the vegetation.
Yeah.
And you
And,
can remove a lot of it.
yeah, right, and 250 says you gotta ask permission for whatever you wanna do. But then, when you get from 150 to 250, there's very little restriction.
Mhm.
Yeah, in my experience, it doesn't feel like there's any restriction. From what I've seen most recently on Corner Road, they basically cleared everything but 10 trees.
Well, they have to leave, between the 50 and the 150, they have to leave like 25%, depends on the size of the lot.
Well, that was actually,
Which is debatable.
Well, I agree.
No one's getting out there checking.
Yeah.
The reason I bring this up is because in the New Hampshire. This is DS, one of DS's documents on where, like, what are the inputs of phosphorus sources? You can see septic systems relatively low on the list compared to watershed and direct inputs. The difference between these are watershed, I might be mixing these two up, but and maybe you two know. Watershed is more broadly.
Yeah.
You know, when it rains, everything coming through the watershed, and then the direct inputs is actually from other water sources into this one, into the lake. So streams, rivers, you know, the collective runoff into those bodies of water and then coming into the lake. But I just want to keep that in mind.
Yeah, that brings us to the next thing, which is we really should have a study. You can do an analysis of the watershed, and you can, that study can tell you what the sources are.
Right.
And
so we've done that. That's
Yeah,
part of
okay.
our baseline mapping. The watershed of Canaan Street Lake is about 1,500 acres, kind of bordering on 14. And we can share some of those maps with you.
Okay.
There's about 6 tributary streams, kind of the major one being the inlet. And then you have the outlet leaving the. But something I noticed, because I did the windshield survey back in December, and you guys were talking, you live on Cornell Road. I kind of noticed that there's a lot of that logging on Back Bay and Cornell Road. And that was kind of one of my biggest concerns.
Right,
Is
you're
it-
talking about Fernwood Farms. and that.
Is it logging or was it trees removed for home development?
It was logging.
Okay,
Yeah, I think you're referring to Fernwood Farms,
Farms,
which is
exactly.
this longer, I can bring up a recent map. Too.
They were up there all winter long last year and the year before.
So go ahead, continue.
Yeah, well, just because, as you're kind of saying, so the watershed inputs, that's going to be like what's coming down through those tributary streams, whereas the
Right.
direct input's going to be a lot of that surface runoff. Which, you know, last year there was a lot of, because there was 60 inches of rain. So that's, you know, I don't know what you have for logging.
the trouble with forestry is you cannot regulate. it. The state considers that one of the sacrosanct worlds. The agriculture and forestry can't be regulated. They are
So-
regulated a little bit, but you
That-
can't really do anything.
does that look like your watershed map?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay,
it's a pretty good representation.
yeah.
You can see the blue, these are the tributaries you're talking about, I imagine,
Oh, yeah.
right? So this is that Crescent Campground wetlands, that was
Yeah.
on the other map.
Yeah.
But I think the logging you're referring to is more up here, although there's no tributary, I can tell you, I live right here, and it's like,
It's pretty steep.
when it rains. just
It's
water
straight into
runs
the lake.
over The
Yeah.
surface, like crazy.
It's like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So
And so,
maybe,
but they've cleared a ton, so the guy who's selling all the lots down by the intake. All that stuff is.
Yeah.
Been completely cleared. And so keeping in mind that, you know, what the state's saying is the worst sources. That's what I really wanna focus on,
Mhm.
you know? And although I do feel the wells are important, you know, I'd love to understand. For Canaan, what is the most important thing to focus on? If
yeah,
possible.
it's a formal study. Are you doing a formal study?
A formal study as far as,
Well, to assess the contributing nutrient
watershed.
sources in the watershed.
I mean, we're not doing any water testing, if kind of that's what you're asking, but under,
Sunapee did one, and it's an extensive study
yes, those things, I mean, are more on the scale of like 5 years.
Yeah.
Um,
that belongs in the plan.
yeah,
How's that?
yeah, well, I mean, we don't have.
Watershed, are we talking about 2 different plans, a watershed protection plan and a source water protection
Well,
plan?
it's part,
It's the
part
same
and
thing.
parcel. I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, they are the same thing.
The master plan.
Every-
Okay.
Everything in the watershed ends up in the lake.
Right, yeah,
So we wanna protect the source water, so we have to protect the watershed.
right,
And the plan that we did in 2006 and their plan that they're doing now is the whole watershed.
but it's, so it's called the watershed protection.
Yeah,
Plan.
yeah.
Okay, sorry,
Yeah.
I'm clear now.
Okay.
I guess this was what I was reading earlier. You know, DES has funded or worked on 37 watershed plans. I wasn't sure if that included our plan back in 2012 or when, 2009.
Since
Six.
2010.
Yeah, you probably did.
It says since 2010 though.
Since 2010, yeah, which, but maybe, you know, we were one of the
Okay.
plans.
I think that might be kind of more related to what the Plymouth State put out, because they did a lot more of like kind of examining the septics and their load into the lake. Rather than, like, I mean, we haven't done any water testing, so you don't know exactly what's going in.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, you don't have to worry about what you've been doing, but in the plan, we can say, we should do this.
Yes,
right,
yeah.
Yep.
You're not gonna do it, you're gonna
Further
tell
study.
Canaan to go do it.
Right,
Further
Yes.
study.
My turn.
Okay.
Yeah,
quick, before anyone time's up.
You haven't spoken yet.
she said you want to go last.
Okay, you wanna be last.
Sure,
Okay.
I'll share.
Good.
I think there's maybe two things I got in mind. One is really along the same vein that we've been talking about. It's general development around the lake too. The focus has been around the reservoir, but I think of two instances. One is actually property next to John's where they were, the guy for a little while was trying to subdivide it into 3 very narrow lakefront properties. Depending on which side you are, it didn't work out for him and he just sold the plot as a whole. But that could have been 3 more buildings where they're cutting down a lot of trees, building houses right on the lake. And in Corner Road, I think there's at least 3 properties on the lake that are developing currently. And
Yeah.
cleared a lot of
Yeah.
property and one just put a giant house up on that second left.
Yeah.
So I don't know around the lake how much more development can be done. I know there's some restrictions with the historic district
Yeah,
on property sizes and whatnot, so that helps a little bit, but if there's anything.
so within, on the western side, that's the historic district,
Mhm.
you got a 2-acre minimum there. And there's also, state has a 150 frontage on the lake. So, but when you get around on Cornell Road, there's no minimum lot size, there's still a frontage requirement of 150.
Is there any minimum lot size? Isn't it half acre from the state?
No, it's whatever will support a septic tank.
Okay. Typically, I've seen it just be a half acre. minimum,
If
but
you got the right soils, it
That's
can be.
until now, you know. Yeah, okay, so it depends on the drainage and stuff.
Yeah.
Or they'll buy the lot across the street, drill underneath and put an elevated septic system. And that's what they've done down in Pleasant Lake, down in London.
So think of an acre as a typical amount of land you need.
Yeah.
Unless you
The
do,
second thing.
Second one was salinity. That's, I know that's come up in the 2006 as it was.
Okay, get her all wound up over here.
That feeds into my one.
Yes, and, you know, I don't know what numbers it takes to start affecting aquatic life, plants and fish species in the lake, but I know it's been a concerning trend, something we probably want to look at, trying to turn around, coming up with some ideas on that. I know part of it was based sodium chloride from the road salt, which I've also heard they tried to do a reduced salt on Canaan Street and it didn't go so well. So,
Not yet. We could keep going.
I can't say I have any ideas to cover that, but it's one concern that I would imagine the trend is still going that direction and probably something to be addressed here.
So I have 2 things, one really general and one very specific. My very specific thing is I want the state to stop using salt on Canaan Street. And they can go to a brine and it would be much better for the lake. So if not that, at least a low salt zone. It's not that hard to do. We need the select board, the emergency department and the school district to write a letter asking the state to do this. But speaking of uniformity, I wish DES and the
never mind, DEC, like DES says, Speed Green Snow Pro certified, and DOT says, we're putting salt down because we don't want any accidents, which I understand. So the one thing for me is to stop using salt on Canaan Street, and how are we gonna? I mean, how are we gonna get that done? I mean, I think we can at least get it reduced relatively easily, depending on what the school.
You spoke
Yes.
to me about this earlier, and I thought it was a great idea, but I
Yeah.
thought some more about it, and I recalled the discussion I had a few years ago. That one thing they have to do on a low salt zone is use more sand, and sand equals phosphorus. So you've got the phosphorus getting into the lake. Salt goes down into the water table, and the water table goes into the lake. The nice thing about sand is it tends to stay on the surface. So if you can control the water flow at the surface, you
Yeah.
can control where the phosphorus goes. So maybe some ditching along with sand use. So if on the side of Canaan Street, if they had a good ditch on the lakeside of the street, and that carried far enough south or low enough elevation, so it didn't have a chance of polluting the lake, that may be okay. But there is this complication of when they reduce salt, they have to reduce sand, because there are some days when they gotta put something on it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Okay, so that's my first thing, and my second thing is, I don't wanna have to deal with cyanobacteria, I wanna do all the things that prevent. Maintain the septic systems. Control just not get there. All those things, that the state cyanobacteria plan that they just published say to do. So just a very general approach. So it would be controlled development and, good filtering barriers along shorefront. I don't know, maybe the other thing about salt, just stream of consciousness here. Two things about salt. One is a lot of salt can come from homeowners salting their sidewalks and driveways. And so there could be an educational component to that.
even the can of peas you put into your septic tank. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, but I have a product I'm gonna ask Robin to carry down at the hardware store that is non-saline way to melt your ice, yeah, apparently. And I lost the other train of thought because I'm having a senior moment, so it may come to me someday.
It'll come back.
Come on.
That's why we have multiple.
Oh, not gonna say weight boats. Oh, I've had it with weight boats this week.
So again, but
Weight boats would be terrible for cyanobacteria, so that actually would be one thing, put it in your plan. No wake boats on the lake.
right, so what, part of the big thing here, it's gonna kind of fall back on, your committee in the town is. Once this is all put together, there really needs to be like. Talk amongst you guys about public outreach, like how do you get this out there so that everybody's aware of. The consequences of what they do on a daily basis and how it affects your water source, so I don't know. If you guys have any sources right now, like public outreaches where, I mean, I know you have your website and people can get to it, but, do you have
Yeah, we
any?
have a weekly newsletter. email.
Okay, yeah, I mean, because that's a huge thing, is. Again, you're a small portion of your whole community, so, public outreach is gonna be really huge when this is done and. You guys are happy with the plan that's there and the long-term things is how do you get that out to your townspeople and get them on board with helping you also protect your lake?
Okay, so why don't you reserve Saturday, July
Third
20th.
of July, I think.
20th, third weekend in July.
Third
Come
Saturday.
to the Lake Association meeting. And you can have a little display about what you're doing. And
July
how it's-
20th.
Take pictures.
July 20th,
Karen-
We'll give you
Carol
lunch.
from your office?
So Karen, just out of curiosity, how many
Yeah.
of the property owners around the lake
Yeah.
are members of the
Carol,
Canaan Street
yeah,
Lake
give it
Association?
for-
I
Oh,
don't,
Percentage.
They used to be
I don't know the
Oh.
percentage, but I would
Like our
guess
reach- not
none
reach
of
over
us too,
Yeah.
I'd
Do
say.
public
at
safety, we
least
don't have
half.
trail anymore.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask.
So,
I think the first thing
But
is
yeah,
Yeah.
we
Increase
have,
your membership.
everybody is part of the membership,
So part of our-
because then you've got an element of education. But I mean, it's important to know that.
Yeah, I think it's well more than half if you look at all the
Well,
addresses,
your
but.
assignment for the next meeting is to go calculate that.
Because I think
Well, look at all
that's,
the
I mean, that's the first step is to get. I mean, because then you've got an avenue that directly to the people that it affects,
Right,
not necessarily affects, but
Right.
right,
that can have the effects.
but we want, like, the latest. You don't have to be a property owner. How did I
Understood.
get this spider?
Oh, There you go. That came from Sunapee problem. There you go.
That's weird.
Those things have been around. That's not the first time I've seen one of
I
those.
think I think it's.
My wife got some.
Calm down, yeah.
Given to her, to them traversing the upper valley.
We hope that.
Not joking, not joking. Little tiny plastic spiders.
Interesting. It's
Yeah.
like, it's
Oh,
like
looks like
ducks.
it was the
Yeah.
Wasn't me.
We hope that more people than just property owners.
Understood. But I
Are
mean,
You
involved,
got
and
kids, they're
so,
grown up,
yeah,
you got kids.
but yes, why don't I do that for the next meeting, I'll figure it
Okay,
out,
right.
okay?
Good.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I'll
good
tell you.
assignment for me.
First, we have the email newsletter through the town. Which is more broad of an audience, but the Conservation Commission is also thinking of spinning up our own. Email list.
And what, you have a website now? Do they have?
We have a page on the website.
Yep, okay.
Yeah, and we're gonna be updating that, but we agreed that having a mailing list for ourselves for
Mhm.
quarterly updates, really low volume. But when we need support for something or input on something, we can blast out to people who really care about it.
Do you have a link, do you have a website, Karen?
Yes,
You do?
Yeah.
Okay, you guys
We're-
do.
we
And
can
both
get
on
to our website.
Facebook?
Through the town.
Yep.
Webpage,
Okay,
and, we have a Facebook page too.
okay, good.
and Facebook's a good idea because there are a couple of other Canaan-oriented Facebooks.
Yeah,
And you don't want to be a pest, but every once in a while, you can put something on there that says, oh, by the way, be nice to the lake, here's how you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's also the Friends of Canaan.
Yeah.
There's other organizations in town that,
And that's a good job
I
for the
think this is
Conservation
the-
Commission.
this is outside of just this project, but I think, one thing we could do better is to engage other like-minded organizations. Cause there's so many active groups in town, so.
Yeah, that's
So-
gonna be one of the things that's in the plan.
Yeah.
Education is very
Yes.
important.
Right.
Get the
And-
message out.
And I think that's, I think that's pretty much outlined, as well. That's one of the things that DES has, asked us to make sure to put in this plan is, what's your public outreach plan? And, like, again, who's on your committee? It's kind of like, it's a guidance document for you guys to protect your lake, but it also outlines who's kind of responsible for certain things. So, again, not that you're gonna be held accountable for that, but it's there. So if something falls through, I don't wanna say you have a scapegoat, but you, at least you know who you're gonna go back to say, look, we talked about this in our committee, and like, this was your responsibility, so, I mean, that's kind of where we're at. We didn't talk to Mike, but does Mike have any
Yeah.
input for?
Mike,
We kind of forgot Mike out there.
I really hadn't thought about this issue very much, and what I'm used to doing is studying, collecting data, asking for data, that sort of thing. That's where I really am now. Just been making notes of all the data and information that I want to gather so I can study this watershed and get a sense of both the surface and the groundwater. So.
So Mike, where are you pulling your information from, if you don't mind my asking?
I just Google all kinds of different places, but Google Earth is a place for me to start studying the watershed.
Okay.
And then I'm locating where all the properties are and what their uses are, residential and otherwise, locating. You can see a lot of things on Google Earth. It captures the forestry work. It'll be dated a bit, but usually not more than 6 months. But you can just gather a lot of data in general, and then I'll be asking for specifics of tests and different kinds of things.
Okay.
But what we're really looking for is we know some certain issues and problems, radon and cyanobacteria. What we're really looking for now is to see if there's any foreseeable problems that we might be able to prevent by doing some meaningful things now. And so it's really what I'm going to dive into. So I don't know, does anybody have any other questions of me?
You know, we were going around the table and we forgot you. You were.
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
Our apologies.
I didn't forget you. I listened very carefully and you know, most of the questions I might have had have been asked already. So I'm ready to dig into some data.
Mike, if we got you like a hobo logger to record temperature waters or the water temperature, would you be interested in kind of like watching the temperature of the lake?
I travel a lot.
Okay,
And I don't know that I'd be around as much as you might want. But
Is it a remote thing?
hobo loggers can be remote because
Yeah.
they're, people use them in the Gulf of Maine for pup and nest monitoring.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay,
You could put it in at our property if you wanted.
You want it in a deep spot? Is it a floater? or
hobo loggers, are pretty affordable in terms of
I mean,
equipment.
Which elevation?
They tend to be surface.
Surface, okay.
What kind of reasoning for that is if you can kind of see temperature trends, we might be able to kind of predict when cyanobacteria might happen more frequently if there's like a range that it tends. Granted, you know, we'd have to like watch and see. You'd have to maybe get a bloom to see where it kind of blooms at which temperature. But if I think that is a fairly low cost option to kind of begin in this monitoring process that's a little bit perhaps more data than just visual. If that is something that you guys would be interested
So it'd
in.
be a would that be helpful,
Well,
John?
I use hobo loggers for my electric motors. For run times, I actually attach them to the electric motors and I take them off
Mhm.
and read right off of them. You can do it for temperature, you can do it for DO, it's about 7 different things that you can do off, very inexpensive. I think they're like $300 a shot. To
But
do,
is-
and then you take the data right off of them,
Yeah,
so that you put it, you can hook it up to your computer and pull the data right off.
yeah. But would it be helpful to have this so you're talking about like a reading every hour? or-
I mean, I think maybe,
You can set it, yeah,
yeah,
you can set it for an hour, a half day, you can set it for a certain time.
5 minutes, yeah.
yeah, but like throughout the bloom period, which tends to be June to October. Maybe that might be something that's nice to have out during those summer months and you have it read maybe twice a day. Just kind of
Yeah.
maybe you do like one in the middle of the day when it's like its hottest and then kind of maybe at night at like the early morning hours when it would tend to be like the coolest.
Yeah, I'm just wondering would it be helpful, like what John said, over the deep spot?
Well,
Like,
that's
where
where we
would
are
you-
now, that's where the intake is, it's right at the deep
Just
spot.
tie it to one of your buoys.
Yeah, that's all, that, actually, a sonobuoy, that's what Plymouth, I mean, that's what Sunapee has. So what they have in terms of what they're measuring, they're only measuring 6 units.
So, yeah, so the town, who owns those buoys? The
Well, we
state?
do,
The-
yeah, so the kids run them over to the boat. You laugh, it's. having
No, I
fun.
believe, watch people go past those buoys all the time.
Oh, I'm in a
to the
kayak, those buoys
reservoir.
don't count for me.
I know. Yeah, I know.
Oh, you
I
said
thought it
that.
was just.
Yeah.
boats past swimmers.
Not me.
So, I'm happy to be the data, or if you want me to go out and download the data.
This thing doesn't have a Wi-Fi connection.
They do, they make them with a cell phone connection,
Okay.
well, almost like a SCADA connection, so
Right.
it'll come to
So
your
you don't
phone
even-
twice a day.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not like you
Yeah.
have to go out into the
Okay.
middle of the lake to grab data. You could get it downloaded right to your phone.
Okay.
Off First Shore is where the buoys are.
Yeah.
Tie it
Much
to
of those
the
cost
buoy.
5K?
Oh, it's not that expensive, I'm gonna say $600-700 for just the cellular link, then you have to attach all your readings into it. So,
Somebody gets.
and
it
through a
set up.
buffer,
Yeah,
How long would it last when it's set up?
oh, it'll last the whole summer long, yeah.
I-
It'll-
I
yeah,
actually
all you
use them
need
too.
the problem is you need to charge the phone and charge everything else that goes along with it, they make little solar panels that go with it, so.
Valerie, question, for you.
Yeah.
The work that you all have been doing so far.
Yep.
Do you have an understanding of our sources of phosphorus and others? Like.
So-
Minerals and stuff.
Yeah, so we basically did, as Susanna said, she did a windshield survey where she visibly looked at everything. So she took a ride around the lake
Okay.
and literally
Thank you, but-
looked at,
That's what
you know,
the state
everything that's
finds
around,
windshield
right,
survey.
we call windshield survey, you know, and so we have, you know, a pretty expansive list of what we know is happening around your lake. And these are things that, again, you know, once we present our initial stuff to you guys, want you to take a look at it and say, hey, you missed this or you missed that. But we have a pretty good understanding based on our windshield survey, our research, and then the prior reports that were done. What you guys really have around your lake. Obviously, there's been much more development recently, as you guys are talking about, than what was in the 2006 study by Plymouth State and things like that. So, you know, those are the things that we really need to update, but unless there's something dramatically new or major changes, you know, what's been done before, we're updating that and making it, you know, as a current day
Sure.
information. So unless there's been some, you know, big new thing happen that we're unaware of or that we didn't see in our windshield survey, I would say, yes, we're familiar with what we have going on around your lake.
I was looking for a term for what Sunapee did, and I think I found it's called a phosphorus loading study.
Oh.
That's-
And is Derek with you?
Derek is with us.
Okay.
So Derek's also been working on the report. He's just kind of listening in and he's been more behind the scenes person.
Okay, awesome.
I don't
I just wanted to give Bill a chance. Bill, did you have anything that you were looking for out of this work? Anything specific or general or? Bill's also on the Conservation Commission.
No, you guys pretty much covered everything I was thinking about. So far, it seems like a solid discussion and going forward with the
Yeah.
the items that have been bandied about in the past.
Thanks, Bill.
So John,
Thanks.
everybody is on the email chain. Am I correct? Everybody that's here tonight was on that
yes,
email chain that you
yeah.
had started?
Yeah.
So I would just say to you guys, you know, at this point in time, having this initial meeting and we've got some input from you guys, I would ask if you guys have specific questions or concerns, like put it in that email chain to us. And then we can, you know, either correspond with you individually or, you know, in the group. And I don't know, how often do you guys plan to meet?
That's the next question.
So I'm gonna throw this out there to you guys.
Okay.
So we're now at the end of March and I would like to say, let's meet again, maybe mid-May. Preferably before Susanna leaves us. She's actually,
I'm going part-time remote
yeah.
for a job up in Acadia.
Yeah,
Bahaba.
yeah.
Yeah, well, it's in
Bahama.
Schoodic
You
actually.
can't get there from here.
Yeah.
I've been
Yeah.
there, so-
So that would be my thought is maybe, you know, 6 weeks from now. Potentially try to schedule another meeting that gives us a little bit of time to pull some stuff together. What I would like to offer to you guys is a couple, you know, maybe 30 days from now, we have a little more detail in the plan that we're working on. And we can provide you with a draft of what we have. And keep in mind, it's probably going to be very draft. There's probably gonna be a lot of information that might be missing. But we will provide you everything that, you know, we want to share at that point in time, that based on what we get for input tonight. And then give you guys a couple of weeks to look at that, and then we can really kind of go over that at a meeting 6 weeks from now. That works
We aim
for
for
you
the
guys?
15th of May. That'd be 7 weeks, but.
Are you still with us then?
I mean, that's kind of just like flexible. I don't
Okay.
start
do it on
until
a
May
Wednesday.
28th.
Okay, so we're good.
Yeah, 50,
Another Wednesday.
Is it the third Wednesday?
It is the third Wednesday.
The 8th is no good for you?
I cannot do the 8th personally, but that shouldn't be the stopping factor.
Well,
Is the 15th the third Wednesday?
It is.
And that's out.
Yeah, I
for me.
can't do that.
That's
And
out for me too.
Does it have to be a Wednesday night
So,
meeting, guys?
If,
Can
yeah,
it be a
to
different night? of
mesh
the
with
week?
everybody else's schedules, it's gotta be either the second or the fourth Wednesday, unless you wanna do it on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday.
Preferably not.
I mean. So who is out for the 8th?
Cody,
Cause that's the
I-
second Wednesday of the month,
we
correct?
go a week earlier, and we go to the end of April.
Like
See,
May 1st.
Or like the
Yeah.
24th.
May 1st, yeah.
First of the
May first
22nd.
is a conflict, I forget who, that's, I have a conflict on that one.
24th of April, is that
I'm-
too soon for you guys?
I would say,
I mean, it would
yes,
give us a month.
yeah, except April starts our crazy busy
Exactly.
season.
I'll be in Italy.
Okay.
So if, I mean,
So-
not to keep kicking it down the road, but what if we push it to like the 22nd, if we push it back a little further?
Kind of close for me.
I know it's close for you, but you can remote in if you need to.
It's true.
Of May.
The 22nd of May?
Yeah,
That works with everybody.
Yeah.
They've all agreed to the second and fourth Wednesday.
And we all have double representation, like from the planning board, conservation.
Yeah,
Commission.
okay.
The only one that doesn't have double is Steve.
Okay. Slacker. Yeah, so if the 22nd of May works for everybody, and Suzanne, I know that cuts it close for you, but, and then our goal will be to get you guys.
22nd of May is a Thursday, right?
No.
No, it's also a Wednesday.
Wednesday,
I'm looking at the wrong calendar.
there we go.
Okay.
But we don't
Yeah,
have, we don't have to
that'll
meet
work.
with you with Horizon, but I think we as a group should come back together. Now that we've all begun to think about this.
Yeah.
And maybe 2 weeks from now, we can meet and
Yeah, that'd be good.
toss things around, so.
Yeah, and again, you know, I just say to you, we have that email chain, you know, let's try to use that, if there's any questions that come up, and though everybody's all in the same loop.
So we'll meet on April 10th.
And our goal will be to have something for you guys, you know, early May. To take a look at and give you plenty of time to review
Yeah.
before we meet.
So we talked about homework assignments.
Mhm.
So I have one for me, which is
Yeah.
the landowner.
Extension letters.
I
But
have
you asked
everything
us to
ready to
all-
roll.
You got my email.
Yeah, I need the
2006.
insurance.
Yeah, I'd like you to look
Okay,
at
all
the
documents.
2006
Oh,
plan.
that's not
Plan.
good. Already.
But there's three things.
And look at
Man,
the,
you've got to
Well,
put
let's
your
say-
hand
I
over
think
it.
it's a 2009 report.
Yeah, so I saw John,
Okay.
John was actually in the
Yeah.
office today.
And was there a third
Yeah, he
thing?
said it's-
Seems like there was a
Yeah,
third.
John, yeah.
The drinking water protection ordinance.
Okay. Those three things.
Oh, maybe I'll send out the links. to
I'll
all
send
the-
that out.
Fantastic.
Oh, where's
And then there's
Yeah.
also the really extensive, I don't know if you two would recommend looking at the, DES's cyanogen, what they call it, cyanogen
Yeah.
plan, a statewide strategy.
So I think that's been
Super
sent,
extensive.
yeah, I think that's been sent to us, and then between Pierce and Melissa, they've also connected us with.
Oh, there's cyanobacteria
There's,
person.
yes, and I can't think of what her name is right
Liz
now,
Milan.
Liz, I was gonna, I
Yeah.
wanted to say Lisa, but Liz,
Yeah.
yeah, and she was on vacation when we had met with Pierce and them last, and I believe she's back now, and.
Mhm.
So, you know, they have provided us with a ton of documentation.
Okay.
And, you know,
You
Pierce,
guys pick one, maybe send it to that thread, and then we can read it for our internal meeting.
Yeah.
Another ad.
Oh, the plan?
yeah.
They had a master plan put together a year ago, and they still haven't made it yet.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're still floating. So when you
Yeah.
ask them questions, we'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, I mean,
We'll
they,
get back to you.
they do have a, you know, they have a pretty good plan in place, and
get
it
it.
basically it's a
Yeah.
guide, again, another guidance document, so.
Let's-
Everything is site specific, you know, lakes,
Right.
you know, watershed specific, things like that, but they have an overall general plan, as you're aware, at DES that we have seen.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
They were given money, so they are actually researching. So, No, I know, that's not bad, don't get me
Right.
wrong, but they're finding places where it's very serious.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
mean, to the point of where they're getting it half a year,
Right.
Yeah.
and they're actually, in Salem, they're actually feeding people. And it's similar to a system that I have, it doesn't treat it at all.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm treating through sand filters, so like John said, the bacteria will die on top of the filter.
Mhm.
And then anything that they release will come right to the sand, and like chlorine's not gonna do anything for it.
Hmm.
So.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, cause they were asking the question when we were there. We met and then talked to them, and they're gonna do another cyanobacteria meeting, similar to what they did. So,
You're on for July 20th too.
I literally put that in my notes.
yeah.
You know, but I gotta tell you, let me just look at my calendar, because I do have a week's vacation in July, and I don't, I'm hoping it's not that time period.
Where's Orca's gonna move
No,
it?
you're safe, I don't leave until the 24th of July.
Okay.
There we go. And she's
Yeah.
going to Bar Harbor.
Yeah, she's gonna be in Bar Harbor.
She's gonna be on
Yeah.
vacation all the time.
Yeah. Yes.
No,
Yeah.
I'll say that, and then I'll be an assault nurse, picking up their waiters.
Well, this has been a great meeting.
Yes,
you all
well,
for
thank
coming.
you guys for, doing this, and then, John, we'll be in touch with you, because we're gonna do the same thing for Andover.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, Well, I'd like to, for Andover, I would like to reach out to Jesse Shoes, who's on the Concom